Hey, good morning, everyone. How you doing? I got a really exciting interview today, kind of flipping the script, if you will. The first 11 or 12 interviews we've done obviously been really fun, and it's really been me asking questions. We're going to flip that over, and I brought to the table with me Scott Farrow. How you doing today, Scott?
Hey, I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm
Oh no,
excited.
oh, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. And so I ran into Scott for the first time 6, 8 weeks ago at a Fresno event I was invited to sort of tell our story. And I've told our story a bunch, and people come up and shake your hand, and it's a lot of fun. But every once in a while, you bump into someone who kind of makes an impression, and you're like, I think that guy's going to go somewhere. And that event, there was a couple, and Scott was, the top of the list. So I reached out to Scott because I know he's a little bit younger and starting in his career, and I'm like, I think we could do something together. Why don't you, as a new investor, interview me? And he's like, sign me up. So Scott, why don't you just real quick sort of introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and then you could take over and be the interviewer, and I'll be the interviewee. So the
Okay,
ball's
great.
yours.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Michael, so much again for the kind words. I really appreciate the opportunity. To everybody who doesn't know me, my name is Scott Farrow. I work in the Fresno area. I'm a real estate agent and an investor. I'm here today because I actually am looking to start getting into my own investing opportunities early 2019 and had a lot of hesitations. And Michael has been somebody that is an option for me to reach out to and ask questions to. So I was excited when he said he could give me some time to actually get this on air and record it. And so hopefully this helps you guys out. I'm just going to ask a few questions that I've had in the past and enjoy, guys. So Michael, just to start off, a lot of us starting out new investors are interested. There's so many options. We've at least narrowed it down to real estate. Um, I'm curious, right? So when you started investing, I know a little bit about your story. When you started
Sure.
investing, where did you start with? What was the first thing you invested in?
Yeah, so you're right. Real estate investing for new investors, the first thing you got to get away from, in my opinion, is the shiny object syndrome, right? What am I doing? Like there was a time over the last 15 or 20 years where flipping, right? HGTV took off and everybody I knew was a flipper. The last couple of years, it was wholesalers and the whole, let's do mailers and door knocking and driving for dollars and all of that. And now I can see an uptick in what I'm even hearing or being called virtual wholesaling, and this sort of promises of riches from sitting in front of your computer. And thankfully, I'm a pretty disciplined individual. I
Mm-hmm.
was raised by a couple of military parents, which instilled discipline, which I'm much appreciative for. And I had a very demanding full-time job. I worked in the tech sector and traveled all over and had the standard 60, 80-hour week. So I knew I only could do one thing. And for us, we started with buy and hold, right? We were buy and hold
Mm-hmm.
landlords. The other wrinkle of that is we spent a lot of time because all the books I read, in 2000 were buy in your backyard, buy 30 minutes from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in the Silicon Valley or Bay Area, and that's impossible. It was impossible in 2000. It's impossible in 2019. It's just crazy. So we found Fresno, and we have been buy and hold investors in Fresno for more than 16 years now. And we started with that first house on Norris Drive, 322, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 car garage. That's where we started.
There you go. And so that awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, and then that leads me right into my next question. I know I've talked to you a little bit about your story. Like I said, what's the biggest mistake you made as a new investor? Going into that first deal, what do you wish you had done better
Yeah.
or prepared for, more thoroughly, or ultimately, do you wish you had done something different?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'll just throw them all out there. And thankfully, I've had time to reflect on this because when you're running as fast as I was, again, 80-hour weeks at a job and, working in real estate from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., most days, if not every day, you don't really have a chance to look back. Now I
Mm-hmm.
do, thankfully. And there's a couple of things that come out. First and foremost, I did not appreciate on my first deal how easy financing was for investors. Now, you got to remember, this was 2003, so
Right.
pre-bubble, right? So Countrywide, IndyMac, all of that world. So I didn't know any different. So I thought I had to put 20% down. I didn't start with a lot, right? We started with roughly $40,000 in savings. So when we bought $100,000 house, we lost half of that, or we invested half of that. And
Mm-hmm.
we could have gotten into that house for $10,000 instead of 20, and that would have been we could have done more.
Right.
As time went by, we certainly refied it and pulled money out. So the story ends okay, but I just didn't think about what's the minimum right at that time. The other
Right.
thing that's more of a larger problem that I actually repeated over and over and over again, and I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's human nature or just how I'm personally wired, but I got enamored with buying the cheapest house in the MLS. Right? If there was a house in a particular zip code, let's say it's 93728 or 93703 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If the house wasn't one of the cheapest 5 listings, I just didn't look at it, because
Really?
I just told myself, and again, this is 2003. That's not what I do today, but this is the big mistake. Is the problem with that thinking is, yes, I put the least down, because anything would finance back then. It was crazy, right? You can almost buy something without a roof and it would have financed back then.
Mhm.
Not quite that bad, but you get the idea. So
Yeah.
I was buying cheap properties. Maybe the neighborhood at the time was 150 and I would buy something for 100 or 110, right? So pretty well used. I
Right.
would put 10 or 20% down. But guess what? Once I owned it, I had to put 15 to 30 grand in to make it rentable, right? To make it the
Exactly.
standard of the neighborhood. So I burned so much cash I shouldn't have. So, I should have bought now what I now call pride of ownership rentals or turnkey, because I would have financed 80% or 90% of the purchase. I
Mhm.
don't have to write that extra 20K check to do the remodels. We exited the first phase of our career with 8 properties, 7 houses and a duplex. And we 1031'd all of that into apartments, which got us to roughly 80. But I sit here now going, if I would have bought pride of ownership stuff, we could have probably done 15 or 16 homes before the bubble. And I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, we could have 1031'd all of that into 160 units. I mean, life would have been so much different. So my
Right.
biggest mistake, and the one I spend a lot of time educating full-time employees on, is buy turnkey ready-made properties, ideally already leased, because you're going to save time and save cash long term.
Right.
So that was a huge mistake, and unfortunately I repeated it over and over and over again.
Mhm. Okay, great. So I'm curious. I mean, you brought up a couple times. Originally, you were looking at the cheapest sales price. It
Mhm.
sounds to me like now you're looking for the deal that has the highest cash on cash return. Is that
Oh,
would that follow in line?
absolutely correct. Today I have all I care about is the cash on cash return or yield or whatever you want to call that metric. I
Uh-huh.
basically I basically now look at my entire outlay of cash. Right. 15 or 20 years ago, it was, what's my down payment? That's all I was concerned with. Now it's, okay,
Hmm.
what's the down payment? What's the closing costs? And what do I have to spend after I own it to make it lease ready? And then I
Hmm.
look at the cash flow, and that's my return, right? I take the expected yearly cash flow divided by total outlay. And, I expect my stuff to produce a healthy return. So absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And so for anybody who doesn't know, can you explain just a little bit more in depth?
Mhm.
How does the cash on cash return work? What
Yep.
are like the percentages, and what do you shoot for versus a standard?
Sure. So let's do the equation, right? It's math, right? So I'm sorry. So there's really 2 numbers. There's the numerator and the denominator. So the numerator is perhaps the easiest one to calculate. It's basically your expected cash flow, right? So
Hmm.
take your monthly rent, subtract your expenses. If you don't know what they are, assume 50%. Just again, easy math. Some people say 40. I want you to be conservative, say 50.
Hmm.
And then whatever your mortgage payment is, that delta times 12 is your yearly cash flow. So congratulations, you have the numerator. The denominator is your down payment, your closing cost, and what you expect your make ready to be, right? You take that, you times it by 100%, and that will then equal a percentage.
Hmm.
What I look for is probably something very different than a full-time employee is, because I'm lucky I'm retired and I can do whatever the hell I want now. So I
Right, right.
personally look for somewhere between 6 and 8% if it's going to be a hold. If it's going to be a flip, I won't do anything less. I can see 20 grand because I don't work for free.
Hmm.
But a lot of my full-time employees, where time is their constraint, I tell them to conservatively finance, which means put more down, because I want them to be low risk, hands off. And if
Mm-hmm.
we can get them a 5% return and then have the tenant pay off the others, they're really happy. So,
Very
I'm
nice.
always a little nervous saying what I look for because most people aren't in my financial position.
Right.
So,
Right.
a lot of the full-time employees I work with, if we can get you 5% conservatively financed, you're going to be in a much better position when you get ready to retire. And if we can get you to 4 properties, I've fundamentally changed your life. So
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time trying to get people to think about 4, because I think a lot of people get lost in financial freedom and how far away it is and all of that.
Right.
I now just say, stop it, get to 4. If we can help you get to 4 pride of ownership rentals, I have changed your life. And that's a fun feeling, frankly, to change somebody's life for the better.
Right. Right. For the better. For the better. I like that you added
Yeah,
that.
for the better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's funny that you bring that up. I actually was listening to a podcast on my way over here today, and it was talking about a gentleman who only had 5 rentals, and he was traveling the world off of those 5 rentals.
Sure.
And you said 4. You know, a lot of people think that it's going to be closer to maybe 200 doors or $190 or whatever, right?
Right.
When it comes down to it, do you feel that there's a truth to the more doors, the richer, or do you feel like the time that comes with only having 5 rentals to watch, do you feel like that is still enriching?
Yeah.
What's your thought process?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I'm not, because again, the ability to do these interviews and talk to so much more people, it's always enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
So actually I say people get lost in the story of offense. And that is, how many doors, how many total rental income, how much my cash flow is, and the bigger numbers are the more impressive ones. I have fundamentally shifted. That's fun, and that's where your energy is, but it doesn't start there. You need to
Mm-hmm.
start on defense. So the lower your monthly nut is, right, minimum, right, how much can I live by comfortably? The
Right.
lower that number is, congratulations, the less units you need. If your monthly nut is $2,000 and you can live on that happily, you can get by in most parts of the country on 5 rentals. Why go to 10? You got to 5, congratulations. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You need 5 to live on, then go get 2 more and have that be your vacation fund. There's no magic. And I suffered from this, frankly. And I don't know that I shared this at the Fresno event. But so when I retired in early February this year, you have 2 days of where you just can't take the smile off your face. You look like a freaking clown. Your muscles fundamentally hurt. It's amazing. But then I went into this kind of spiral because I'm a type A person. I have to have a goal and all this stuff. And I was like, what are you doing, you lazy guy? Get off your butt. You're terrible, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't until I realized that, you know what? We did invest 15 years. We got somewhere. We sacrificed like nobody we knew. And it's time to enjoy. You don't have to go from 200 to 500 doors. Stop that. Be happy with you have. Do this
Mm-hmm.
YouTube thing to help people and, work out and travel. It's like nothing wrong with that. So, once I got rid of you don't have to be bigger, just cover your month, play defense, and life's good. So if you can get by in 5, you're going to retire a lot sooner. And that's why I think guys like you're in the
Mm-hmm.
unique position. Because right now, I fundamentally believe you live comfortably.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what? If we magically did a magic wand and you waved over and you were the average human, male, and you're now 10 years older, you're probably going to be living comfortably. But guess what? Your expenses have probably tripled.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by defense. No, maybe you should work on, let's have my monthly expenses go up by 10% of my income jumps. A lot of people I've worked with over the years made ridiculous money. But every year they would let their expenses go through the roof and they'd have nothing left. I'm like,
Right.
that's just wrong. We have to learn how to play defense. We're such a consumer-based economy. We freaking do these Instagram posts and Facebook things, and we're buying stuff we don't need to impress people we don't like, and it's just wasteful. So
Right.
there you go.
It's funny you bring that up because from somebody you're 45, right?
46 now, but yes, retired at 45.
46.
Yep.
Exactly. So from somebody who retired at 45 or 46, a lot of people are going to be asking, do you even know how much you're going to be spending in the future? And that you took that leap. It sounds to me like you don't look at it from an income base. You look at it from an income to expenses ratio.
Yeah, I only look at expenses, and we've been lucky in that regard. So to put in kind of some rough context, we we lived on roughly 60% of my income for the last 20 years. And that allowed us to save money to invest, right? To do what we did. So we lived that way for a long time. We've always played defense first. And I didn't know that's what we were doing. I just knew we were sacrificing so we had extra money to buy stuff, right? Buy investments. Now I realize that is the start. You got to play good defense. And yeah, we went out, we controlled our monthly nut. Now we're in a position where actually we're paying off some debt and our monthly nut is lowering, but our income obviously is okay. As you know, in the Fresno market, rental rates are increasing. So again, right? Think about it, right? So we're lowering our monthly expenses because we're paying off debt. Our asset base is fine, but we're bumping up rental rates by, I don't know, 5%. Take 5% times our base. That's a freaking healthy number. So, we're doing just fine. And, I don't think about offense. I think about defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, it's something that I keep hearing you say. I keep hearing you saying we and us.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're married. Tell me a little bit more. I know one of your biggest rules comes back to your relationship. Tell me.
Absolutely.
For somebody like me who's not married yet,
yep.
What do you feel is something that I should be wary of getting involved in something, risky at a young age?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by risky. So let me answer the question and maybe we'll scratch that risky comment a little bit in a minute. So if you are in a relationship, either some type of committed relationship, whether you're married, you've been living together a while, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, or boyfriend, or girlfriend, right? I'm not, whatever, right? Yours is be you. Who cares? You have to be on the same page for so many different reasons. First off, we just talked about defense and offense. If I'm willing to live on 60% of my income, but my significant other isn't, I'm toast, right? It's not going to happen. If I'm all in on real estate and she's 98% in on real estate, and as you heard in our story, our first property blows up because the renter, doesn't pay us for 6 months and destroys the house, she's going to take that 2% she wasn't in and beat me up. And if she does that, we never get past our first one. We sell it, we lick our wounds, and we go, well, guess real estate sucks, and we never retire, right? So you have to be in. You have to all in. And I'm not talking 99.9. I'm talking 100. And if you're not, go sit down and have a conversation about what it is. And usually there's some kind of risk factor or something that they don't understand or you haven't communicated, and you just go have it out because it's just not worth the hassle. Real estate's going to test you. It's going to test you over and over again. And if your relationship is not strong enough, oh, I feel for you. So if you're not in a relationship, to your situation, when you start to, maybe not a first date, but like when you start to get, I don't know, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever it is, it's time to have that conversation. Let them know, hey, I do this. And, oh, by the way, you may see my, nice car or whatever, but this is where we're going. And I have these expectations. And you're going to know pretty quickly if they're going to be on board or, nope, you got to take me to the nicest restaurant. You got to buy me that third drink. You got to buy me that, that Gucci or Louis Vuitton purse or whatever the nonsense is in that situation. You just need to cut that stuff off quick.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. But as far as I didn't really understand with the risky comments.
I was just referring to risk. Exactly. The risk as in real estate. A lot of people that aren't in it all the time just view it as almost kind of like the stock market or something where the investment has the opportunity of crashing. And if you don't do things, why things will happen. And
I think that's probably generational, right?
Really?
My age group, right? The Gen Xers, real estate, it hurts some of us for sure, but I think we've been around long enough to know that real estate generally is a solid investment, assuming conservatively financed, fixed rate debt, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Your generation that unfortunately was coming up through the crash probably knows real estate for them mostly as a disaster, right? You probably
the year 2008 was all I knew about real estate until about probably 12 months ago.
Yeah. So that generation, you're going to carry that for years and decades, right? Your friends and peers and all of that. We need to realize that. And, you probably have lots of friends whose parents lost their house or knew someone that lost their house. And that's, real estate for your generation will probably be perceived as risky. Hence the not buying a home until you're in your 30s. I get it. then again, it's watching podcasts like this and seeing interviews of people have really done it. And again, have
Exactly.
those conversations, because real estate's really
Exactly.
not that risky. Why 2008? It's because people did stupid things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they took the risk, right?
Yeah, they made real estate risky. Here's a hint. If you buy a house for 200 grand, you get a mortgage for 200 grand that's negative amortization. You add to that balance, and then your interest rate spikes after 2 years from 2% to 9%. That's a problem, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of the loans that blew up.
Mm-hmm. Well, very cool. Okay, so moving on. So I know you live in the Bay Area. You
I do.
invest in Fresno. I think you told me one time that you've never stayed the night in Fresno before. Is that true?
That is still true. Yes, I've had some long
Wow.
days in Fresno, but I have never slept or spent the night in Fresno as of today. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So there has to be a lot of things that come with being an out of town investor that I don't know anything about, that I feel like a lot of people can understand. A lot of people aren't in the situation where I am, where I live in a market that
Yeah.
has the opportunity for rentals. I'm curious, what's the most common limiting belief that you had when you got started?
Limiting belief when I got started. Wow, that's a good one. I believed probably, certainly for too long and probably for 10 years, that the answer laid in this magic spreadsheet. I believed that real estate was a math formula, and I just hadn't unlocked it yet. And part of this is because I have an accounting background. I have an MBA. I'm a numbers person. I write or spell like terribly, but math is my thing. And I just thought the answer was in the math. So I did not focus on building relationships for the first 10 years. I did not really network. I did not really go to events. I don't know that I ever had a true scarcity mindset, but pretty close. And it wasn't until I sort of had that aha moment that real estate is certainly the most people-oriented business there is, then that there's always another deal, that I got happier because I wasn't beating myself up that my spreadsheet wasn't magical yet.
Right.
But the more and more people you talk to, more and more deal flow comes and all of that thing. So my most limiting belief was not networking in the beginning. And
Really?
that was so unfortunate, given I'm in sales and networking comes relatively easy. That was a huge mistake.
Which is really funny because I met you at a networking event. This is me networking again on a podcast, and so it's funny. So tell me, I mean, like, what was that aha moment? I mean, where did you realize that was the answer?
So I one of my mentors, again, you bump into people over time, right? One of my first mentors was Bruce Norris, who helped me understand affordability index. And I put a video out on it this morning, but he introduced me to a gentleman named Tony Alvarez out of Southern California. He goes by the nickname REO Mentor because he did a lot of his stuff in the crash. But getting to know Tony and listening to him and reading his book, I was like, you dumb idiot. Real estate's a people business. The more and more people that talk to you, the more and more people that like you, the more and more deal flow comes. And Tony's just this big, huge teddy bear and the nicest guy you ever to meet. So sincere and so warm. I'm like,
yeah.
I get it now. So
there you go.
Shout out Tony Alvarez.
Tony Alvarez. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm gonna have to take that down real quick. Interesting. And so you were originally finding a lot of your deals through the MLS. Now you're finding deals through your relationships and networking.
Yep. Someone
like me, you have the opportunity to do either. You have the opportunity to do a lot of things. You got a lot of time.
Okay.
What do you think is the best option?
So I would attack the question this way. I still believe that I built a huge foundation by looking at the MLS every day. I must have looked at the MLS probably 1,000 times a year, right? Most of the time, a couple of times a day, right? It's just,
oh my goodness,
it became a habit.
Right.
And now let's be clear. When I say MLS, it's not the MLS that you have because you're an agent. This was Realtor.com. This was FresnoHomes.net. This was, I don't know what it is. 80% of the fields in the MLS? I have no idea, but it's some subset, right? The reason I did that, or the reason I think that's valuable, is I can now spot trends because I look at it every day. I see price drops. I could see neighborhoods going. I could see where some landlords give up. So I think that's extremely valuable. Because I think the MLS is where, I don't know, what do you want to say? At least 70 to 75% of all transactions occur in the MLS, right? There's all these outside and wholesalers and private sales and all of that, but still most of the real sales come out of the MLS. So pay attention, right? You should look at all the net new listings and price drops all the time. Because I think as you do that, you'll start to go, wow, that one's different than all the rest. I'm going to call that agent and lock that down.
Right.
That's
right.
The other one is, I think you need to network with people like you're doing now with Jason and Jason Pritchard, who was nice enough to make an introduction and says, get this guy on the podcast because he's awesome. And then, Chris Williams and all these other guys and other agents. And the key there when you do that is to tell them what you're looking for. Don't say, I'm looking for a deal. That just like tattoos newbie over your forehead. You need to say things like, I'm looking for something in the Tower District, which for those that don't know, Fresno is typically 93728. I'm looking for at least 1,000 square feet, at least 3 bedrooms, and off-street parking. Right? You say stuff like that, you're like, oh, God, this kid knows what he's looking for.
Specific, huh?
Right. I'm looking for a multifamily, something between 2 to 4 units, preferably 4 units. Anything but studios priced under $400,000. The more
that's what I'm looking for right there.
There you go.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yay!
Hopefully a 4 unit, hopefully in the Tower area, somewhere that I can own or occupy for a little bit and enjoy rent-free living.
There you go. So let's talk about that, right? So if I was you, now that I know that, right? I didn't know that before, I guess.
Right.
So if I was in your situation, because you are who you are and you're in the area, this is actually what I would do. I don't know how many fourplexes there are in the Tower District, but let's just say there's 112.
Way more than that.
So what is it? Do you know what the number is?
I don't know what the number is, but driving around the area.
Okay. So let's say it's 300.
Packed.
Let's just say it's 300.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually this is what I would do. I would take the time to write a personal letter and then I would spend the time to mail it, and I would handwrite or have someone else handwrite the envelopes. And I would send a letter to every owner of a fourplex in the Tower District. This is what I'm looking for. And in your situation, I would specifically call out that you would prefer owner financing.
Yeah, because you can ultimately get them more, right? Is the goal there?
You
or what's your reasoning for it?
Well, the owner financing is good because you can typically create a win-win situation. Some of the owners you're going to get to are older and thinking about selling and have depreciated to zero and don't want the tax hit and just want to die so they can do stepped up basis to their heirs. However, if you go to them and say, you know what, let's do an owner finance deal. Let's set it up where it's, I give you $10,000 now and $1,000 a month or whatever it is.
Right.
It allows them to get little pieces of income every year instead of this huge tax hit because they depreciated it to zero, right? Let's just use 400. If they depreciated it to zero, they owe, depending on their tax situation, they could owe up to $80,000, right? Or if they sold it to you at $1,000 a month, they're going to owe perhaps zero taxes because they're below the income thresholds, and we have a progressive tax bracket. So
right,
that's what I would do.
That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. I was trying to think of ways that I could do it. I was thinking potentially door knocking, since I'm an agent, so I have addresses and whatnot.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's not a bad idea. And I think anything you could do to talk to owners is a great idea. The only problem with fourplexes is the ones that you're going to buy, I'm willing to bet 99% of the owners don't live there.
Well, I'm saying go and find owner's address. And that's how we're going to mail it, right? So going and door knocking and personally speaking to them, because I think that it makes a little bit of a difference when you see somebody versus when you see the note. But I think that what you're doing is going to allow me to actually have more opportunity to potentially get to pick between. So.
Yeah, and maybe in your letter, again, make it personal. Even handwrite it if
Oh, for sure.
You're selling to people that are you're contacting people in their 60s and 70s, so email's not as friendly. It's new to them.
It doesn't stand out.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out, and make it short. And if they happen to live local, say, I would just love to come talk to you about potentially buying your thing, and see what they say. Right?
Yeah.
You don't even have to put any numbers. I'm a young investor. I'm an agent. I'm looking for a fourplex in the Tower. I saw your pretty house. Here's a picture, whatever. I'd love to come talk to you about potentially buying it. Call me if you want to talk. Be done.
That's crazy. Okay, so very interesting. So, and part of what, just to tie it all back, you were saying is when you're going out and networking, tell people what you want. Don't assume that they know.
Well, absolutely. Yes. And again, the more specific you can be, right? The most frustrating conversations I have with are, if you find a deal and you can't close, call me. I'm like, I can close every deal that comes. If it's a deal to me, I'm going to find a way to close the deal, right? Don't say things like, never be the newbie, right? Never put the tattoo.
Right,
Be
right.
specific.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Okay, so that leads me to my next one, because I think a big part of what people look for isn't the difference between being a good investor and a bad investor, because nobody wants to be a bad investor.
Yeah.
I think the difference is there's investors who put a lot of their money and a lot of time into these rentals and they don't pan out,
Right.
to be able to make them financially independent. You're somebody who's definitely excelled in the business. I'm curious, what do you think is the number one reason why you are a great investor versus just a good investor or a bad investor?
Well, thank you for that. I'm never one to call myself a great investor. I think we can do lots of things, but we did exit, so
There you go.
that's
A
kind of fun.
successful investor,
There
right?
you go. I think there's a couple of things. Again, I've had a chance to reflect. The first thing is we, while we are buy and hold investors, we paid attention to the market, right? I mentioned earlier, we looked every day. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a time, and I think we highlighted early in this interview, where the market got stupid, right? That first
Right.
house we bought for $100,000, we sold for 265 grand. But the problem was it rented for the same damn amount.
Mm-hmm.
So, where I'm going with this is we couldn't buy the ninth house, right? We had 8 properties and we were looking for the ninth. And I wasn't going to buy an alligator, a negative cash flow property. So we were stuck and it hurt. So instead of just sitting on our hands and crying and whining for the market to change and, oh my God, I wish it was cheaper and blah, 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 we took action. And,
Mm-hmm.
first we absolutely, I've admitted this many times, we looked at other areas. We flew to Texas, we flew to Arizona, we flew to Nevada, we went to Denver, we went all over, but nothing made sense like California real estate in Fresno. So instead of going somewhere else or buying the ninth house, we went to a niche in real estate that was not active. It was the 5 to 20 unit properties. So what we found is we could buy a 5-unit property that rented for 150% more than our house that was cheaper. So think about
Right.
it. 265K house, 1,100. 5-unit building renting for 2,800. 50 grand less. I mean, at some point, you just got to pay attention. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we paid attention to the market, and when the market said 1031, we 1031. Then when the market rolled over, again, we're paying attention, right? Stuff started getting reduced all the time. However, we were investors and no bank wanted to talk to us, right? We never
Mm-hmm.
had a problem getting bank loans. Now suddenly no bank wants to talk to us. We own real estate and we're real estate investors and we're terrible, right? We're
Right.
evil.
You're the reason this happened.
Yeah, I would walk by Bank of America and Wells Fargo and feel like alarms would go off. It's like, oh my God, he's an investor. Don't talk to him. It was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, we took action. We were seeing the deals and we said, this is not okay. We have to buy stuff. So we went and found hard money lenders, and we did lots of deals with hard money lenders, which were expensive and huge down payments and all of that, but we got deals done. And then
Mm-hmm.
we kept going, and more people came to us that are in our network, right? True friends and family, and said, take our money because they're paying us less than 1%. So we did private money. And
Right.
it was through this whole crash that we went from having these 80 doors we started at the peak to over 150. And it was all thanks to our action and taking what the market gave us and finding ways to get done. And we literally bought stuff out of the MLS that was for land value. And the only
Mm-hmm.
reason is because we took action, and we secured harder private money even when banks wouldn't lend to us. So that's what made us different. Is we never,
Creativity almost.
yeah, it's creativity, never accepting no. We found a way to create deals, whether it was taking equity and going into apartments, or if it was paying somebody 9 or 10%. So be it. I don't care. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I know you kind of brought up, like, just don't say no. I know one thing that I've kind of found is the situation of, if you want it, you can find a way to do it. And if you don't, you'll always find excuses
Yeah.
instead of solutions. Is there ever a time where you get that pushback though, and you feel like, oh, this is not right. This deal shouldn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. A lot of the deals I've done the last 18 months or so are owner finance deals.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes owners start a conversation with good intentions, but somebody in their family or their network starts whispering about risks and this and that. And, you with owner financing, you get really creative and do all these things. And when they come back and they suddenly start changing everything,
Uh-huh.
I act as this is not good faith. And most of the time will just disengage and say, okay, well, clearly something happened on your end. Somebody said something and this is no longer being negotiated in good faith. I'm out, right? I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do deals today. So if I think somebody is being dishonest or is really trying in a win-lose situation, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not going to play. I'm
Yeah.
out. Time out. See you later.
Well, that's why you say that, because you're an investor. Aren't you a win-lose kind of guy?
No, never.
Yeah.
Win-win, especially owner financing. I
Yeah.
never want to leave anything I do, whether I'm buying something or I'm selling something. I want the person on the other end to get at least 51% of the value. I'm willing to take 49% or less, everything I do. And it's usually more like 60-40.
Mm-hmm.
I have to look myself in the mirror. And if I feel like I've taken advantage of someone or put myself in a situation where they can trash my reputation, forget it. Warren
Mm-hmm.
Buffett talks about, I think one of his quotes goes something like this: it takes 30 years or decades to build a reputation and 5 seconds to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to lose my reputation over a deal. Forget it. It's not worth it. It could be $100,000 payday and I'm not losing my reputation over one silly deal. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Very interesting. And then that's something that I think is important to stress people, because when I told them, like, hey, I'm looking to be an investor, I'm in sales. It's funny when you see somebody who saw you originally as one person, they hear you say investor or real estate agent, and you see almost a frown on your face, and you're like, look,
Yeah.
there's
They get
people aren't
guarded.
made equally, right? Not everybody's the same level of morals and whatnot. The great thing about working with Jason, who you interviewed earlier, is when I
Yeah.
first met with him, I asked him kind of point blank, like, dude, how do you morally justify some of these things? And this was before I knew anything about real estate or
Yeah.
investing, he was doing, right? All I knew is he was buying a house for less than what he was going to sell it for. So
Yes.
somebody's losing money, right? And he was bringing out that, like, you're not doing this because you're trying to hurt somebody else. You're looking to find a solution or a situation where somebody needs that money.
Yeah.
You can provide the number that helps them, and that's what they're happy with. They walk away smiling. You walk into a situation that you can handle. You're smiling,
Yeah.
and you're giving the property back to the community at a price that they're smiling at. And it was kind of interesting. I really didn't expect to hear that from an investor, and it's definitely a big part that kind of brought me in.
And let's be fair. I mean, you have to control who you network with, and you have chosen one of the best individuals in Jason Pritchard to be around. He is who he is. He's authentic as the people who subscribe to this channel saw, and you get to see him every day.
Mm-hmm.
I bring that up because, reputations or I don't know what stereotypes happen. And there are a lot of people out there that will, I don't know, steal, cheat, lie, and feel good
Mm-hmm.
about it. I choose not to associate with people like that. You won't see
Right.
any of those people on this channel. If I get a wind of somebody that's, willing to stick, somebody, I'm just going to kick them out of the network. It's just not going to happen.
Great. Well, hey, Ben, that's really good to hear. And that's something that a lot of people need to understand, is there's communities of people that are bad in this group. And it's just like any group. I mean, there's going to be people that do that. But for the most part, you got to look for people that aren't going to be doing that. And you're going to find that they're bringing back to the community a lot, right?
Amen. Yep. Good call.
Well, great thing. Well, hey, so my next question is kind of interesting, because I have my own answers on what I think is difficult.
Okay.
It's funny, you're in a very different position now. On your end, what do you feel is the most difficult thing about investing?
Oh, again, right. So you got to appreciate my situation. I'm 2.5 hours away. Time was my constraint, not money. I only had access to the MLS, right? So I didn't have deal flow from networking in the market and all of that. But that said, I think the most difficult thing for a type A person like myself was letting go, giving control to other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was admittedly focused on my Excel spreadsheet, we bought a lot of stuff. But it was having to let, property management and repairs and tenants, and this business is so people oriented that
Right.
bad stuff's going to happen. And you can either choose to grind on every little detail or just take it as a cost of doing business, learn from it, and move on. So it took me a while, but I finally got to the point that I said, well, my core competency is finding deals and securing capital. I'm going to let go. I'm going to outsource everything else. So that was hard for me because, I mean, it's funny to admit, I remember there was a fourplex, or I think it might have been a fiveplex on Clinton that we owned. And I remember one time it went vacant, and I'm like, I'm not going to pay that $800 to paint it. I'm going to drive down there and paint it. I'll never do that again.
Yeah, no.
Not worth my time. But
no, that's awesome, and I've learned that from like Jason and Benny and some of the guys I work with.
Yeah.
Because I started as a photographer, and when I first got into the business, I was like, I'm gonna buy the lenses I need, and then I'm gonna shoot all of my listings. I'm gonna save this much money every listing I have and make that much more.
Yeah.
And then I started realizing, like, I didn't do a single one. I shot, I think, some before photos for one of Jason's opportunities, and I was like, oh man, like, not only did I do it worse than what these other guys are doing, it took me longer, and I could have been making money somewhere else, right?
Oh, well, you learned your lesson. That's
yeah. It was funny that you brought that up. I think on my end, I think the biggest thing about being a new investor, or somebody who hasn't even got his first rental, right? So before I even gotten into it, just doing all the education and actually doing the process, patience and creativity. I mean, every deal I bump into, it's never been perfect. And it's like, this is great. It rents well. It has a great property. All this is going to work out, but I can't live there because there was 2 hijackings and car theft and assault in the last 24 hours. Right.
Yeah. Whatever.
Or then you just can't quite even finance it, or I can't find a way that I can actually get into the property, because I don't have a competitive enough bid, things like that. But it's interesting hearing from your side that it's more like, hey, I got all of it already. I just need to let other people kind of take over.
Yeah, because it slows you down. So the other thing I would say, again, for other new investors, when I hear about, probably my most frequent question is, how do you stop analysis paralysis? Right? Most people are looking for the perfect deal, right? Guess what? There is no perfect deal. What I've told them to do is, okay, you're doing all the legwork. You're doing the hard part. You're looking all the time. You're finding stuff. You're getting close, but you just can't pull the trigger. What I tell them to do is stop looking. Go figure out what your metric is, right? This is a question you asked earlier. Let's just say it's 5% because it's it's half a 10. If you go find a property that makes 5%, write the offer. That was something we did, right? It's not a rule we use today, but what we had way back when was 1%, because that's what the real estate book said, is if you can find a $100K house that rents for $1,000, it'll cash flow. Now, I've since learned that that's simplistic and lots of other things can happen, but that's all I knew. And we found one that hit the rule. We looked at one house that day. I still remember driving 2.5 hours thinking we're going to look at 20 properties, and we only looked at one because it was a seller's market. But it met the rule. So we left, kind of disappointed because we only saw one, but then we looked at each other, and Olivia, my better half, goes, it hit the rule. What are we going to do? We're either going to buy it or we're going to stop. I'm never coming here again. I'm like, all right, let's call the agent's write an offer. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So,
very cool.
She's good at that.
You need somebody who can sometimes push you, right?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. So, kind of wrapping it up a little bit. You've hit on the book a few times. I know you talked about Tony for a minute. What's the best real estate related book that you've read?
Yeah. So the best author I've read, he goes by a nickname. It's called Fixer J. His name is actually Jay DeSima. He has several books written in, I don't know, probably the 80s that I've read. Goldmine Houses. Basically, it's the buy multiple houses on one lot, buy and fix them up, rent them. He's in California. I think he's in Redding or somewhere. But again, he's the guy that I sort of latched onto. Not he's not a best writing author, so don't think you're going to get. He's not a pro. He's a real estate guy. So,
right.
Spellings and the wrong word used, but that's the guy that I've read. I think I have 3 of his books on my bookshelf. I've probably read them collectively 20 times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy that spoke to me the most. And it's like, okay, go that way.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, awesome, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate the opportunity to come out and actually interview and ask you a whole bunch of these questions. Hopefully we can do this again sometime, formulate some
Sure.
more questions once we have a deal or something like that going on and
There you
actually
go.
going.
That'd be fun.
In the meantime, I mean, what are you doing on your day to day? Like, are you in Fresno often? Are you still
Yeah.
purchasing property? What are you up to?
Oh yeah. So I'm always looking. I looked again this morning. I found 2 or 3 deals that we're going to be looking at. We are adding to our portfolio where it makes sense. I'm seeing the market get soft, and when the market changes, I get aggressive because I think A, sellers are going to start to cry uncle in about 4 or 5 months. B, I think sellers or buyers are going to disappear at exactly the wrong time, just like they did last time, and I'm going to buy a ton of stuff. So yeah, I'm buying to hold. I'm buying to flip and help friends. So I come to Fresno probably 5 times a month now. Almost certainly averages once a week, sometimes twice. Like
Wow.
Thanksgiving week, I didn't come, but yeah, once
Right.
a week. I'm coming next Thursday. I think is the next time I'm scheduled. So yeah,
Okay.
it's I'm not done. I still got stuff to do.
Sounds good, man. Your type A will never outlive you, or what?
Yeah, never outlive you. Never go away. So Scott, I want to thank you for giving me all this time, at being prepared and thinking about this, asking great questions. I think this interview
Thank you, man.
is going to be watched a lot, and hopefully it helps lots of people. So I want to thank you for your
I'm hoping
time.
so too, man.
All right, take care of yourself.
All right. Hey, thanks, Michael. Take it easy, man.